Welcome to STEAM State of Mind, your favorite source for all things STEAM education.
STEAM State of Mind.
This isn't just science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It's a state of mind, a different way to approach education in the classroom.
STEAM State of Mind.
Enjoy these conversations with educators, students, and community members as we explore what it means to be in a STEAM state of mind.
STEAM State of Mind.
Hi from Kettering, I'm Kari.
And I'm Bern.
And we are here with the STEAM State of Mind podcast. And Bern, why don't you introduce our amazing guest today?
Okay, so I am, once again, we just are so fortunate here in Kettering to have so many amazing people that work with all of our students and just tries to do everything she possibly can to make sure that our students are successful. And our counselors in Kettering do an amazing job. And Jody Ball is a counselor at Greenmont Elementary. And I'm going to let her give us a little more information about her background. How did she get here? Her passion, whatever she would like to share with us, just so you get to know her a little better.
All right. Well, I'm Jody Ball, and this is my 25th year in education, but this is my first year serving as a school counselor, which I'm thrilled about. My preceding 24 years were in the classroom. I taught first, second, and third grade. I've been in Kettering for 20 years, and I actually had the opportunity to teach at Greenmont as a third grade teacher years and years ago. Left for an opportunity at a different school to job share and raise kids, and then I got to come back here this year as the school counselor. So I am thrilled to come here every day, and my passion is just helping kids understand they have such great potential and just really helping them to come up with the strategies and the coping skills that they can unlock that potential and just be successful.
So what kind of prompted you to make that move from the classroom to wearing the school counselor's hat?
I think personally, just change is good. I think change is growing. I love learning, and it was just an opportunity that I just saw to help kids in a more intensive way. The needs are building, and a lot of our kids have much greater needs that exceed what, you can do inside the classroom. And I just felt a real calling to help kids in that, like I said, a more intensive manner.
Well, they're certainly fortunate to have you here, Jody, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so, Jody, everybody's probably asking the question, okay, why in the world are you having, this counselor on a STEAM State of Mind podcast? But truly, you have that state of mind. Now, you're coming from a classroom setting, and we've worked on a couple of things prior to you being a counselor. But what I would like to hear from you is how does STEAM fit into the STEAM state of mind fit into the counseling role, the counselor's role?
Well, you mentioned the acronym SEL. So just in case anyone's listening and they don't know what that is, that stands for social emotional learning. And we're integrating SEL into classrooms all over. It's not just the counselor's role, but as the counselor, that's a focus of my program. So I, like any educator, I use data to drive what I do in the building. And as part of my school counseling program, I use Ohio standards. Ohio has SEL standards for students. I also follow ASCA, which is the American School Counseling Association. They have mindsets and behaviors for students. And those goals and those standards are really geared toward growing students in a way that students build self-efficacy, perseverance, coping when they are facing a setback or a challenge. And how that marries so well with STEAM education is that it's using your social emotional skills and putting them into action alongside of the STEAM concept. When they are, we were working with first graders yesterday, and they had to create something magnificent. And the lesson preceding that was how the students will work through when they have a setback and it's not working how they think it should work. I mean, that's day-to-day life. Those are life skills. And so they just align beautifully together.
So when we did that lesson together yesterday, we team taught it together. So what was your, how did you see the students perform when they were integrating these SEL skills with the STEAM challenge that was presented to them. And these were first graders.
These are first graders, and they're small classes, but we'd still combine them. So we had a very full classroom. And we highlighted the Ohio SEL standards that we wanted to touch on yesterday, right? And so a couple of the top ones where I can ask for help when I face a setback or challenge. And so we were really honing in on that piece of it and the perseverance piece. But what was really cool was when we broke apart and the kids were in groups trying to create their magnificent thing. That's just a book we base the lesson off of. I definitely saw where they were asking for help from their neighbors that were in their group. Teamwork. They were helping one another and allowing each other to help. Sometimes kids, they want their own thing, but they were really open to communicating and asking for help from their neighbors and offering it. And they were using positive communication in the language they were using. It was just like this whole conglomerate of amazing SEL skills when they were working on this STEAM education project.
Yeah, it was so cool to see.
Well, and what I wanted to say, because what's so neat to me is hearing you talk about these little bitters, the little first graders. But how do you like give them the confidence to kind of take the reins and be a part of the process of building this SEL STEAM lesson? You were talking about how they talked with each other and they came up and they problem solved and things like that. How do you help kids know how to be able to do that? How do you kind of instill that confidence and, like you said, that self-efficacy so that they're a part of that whole SEL STEAM process, not just sitting there listening to you and Bern, spout things off to them?
Right. Well, it's definitely not an isolated, like we did this lesson and they had this success. I think it's the building of a culture in your building. I think it's from the moment they come in the morning that, I have the most amazing job of anyone in the school because I get to stand at the door.
Well, I kind of disagree. I think I do. But anyways, go ahead.
I guess my
It's another discussion, boys and girls.
I get to stand at the door and greet every student when they come in and call them by name every morning. And it's so cool, and I know when they go to their classroom, their teachers are standing at the door to greet them every morning, and they're building this, these positive relationships with adults. And we work with our PBIS team in creating that culture of positive language and redirection and, our core values of respectful, responsible, and safe. And we just integrate that into the day. So building that, helping students to build their own confidence, right? It's really we can't give that to them. It becomes like this incremental day-to-day steps that we take as a whole team in the building. And so then we get to see it unravel when we do this dedicated lesson, with them, and they have this chance to really show those skills off in that isolated, situation.
Yeah, I love how you just talked about that it's a culture. We've talked about that in the past, and it is that STEAM state of mind and that culture where, kids, when they walk into the building, they know that they're loved, they know they're cared for, they know that they're going to be challenged, yet they're going to be supported, they know they're going to be engaged, they know that they're going to be all of these things just where the kids want to go to school. It's not something they want to learn. That's where I think STEAM education, the STEAM state of mind, and setting that culture is a really positive thing that you're establishing here at Greenmont. So,
well, and because we've talked, Bern, and about that whole idea that you have to be careful that you don't educate in silos, that you don't, you do your thing and you do your thing and you do your thing, and that's not going to make for a super successful building as a whole. So you have to, like you said, you can't just have an isolated class and try to instill that confidence and self-efficacy and understanding of those core values. That has to be something that's done on a school-wide basis. And it's so neat to hear that that's happening here because that's exciting. I mean, that's
really exciting.
That's really what our kind of our strategic plan is all about, is sort of instilling those core values and building those kids so that they have those portrait of a graduate, virtues that we hope they have when they graduate from Fairmont High School. So how cool is that? And to incorporate it into STEAM is so neat.
Yeah. Well, and, you were talking about the books that we are using. So we are integrating the language arts.
Absolutely.
We're
I caught that as soon as she mentioned.
Yeah.
Something magnificent.
I know it is such and the kids got to know that word and they were like, and oh, it was so cool to watch these kids when nobody, I didn't hear anybody say, well, that's not magnificent, because that was a little bit of my fear. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, what if another kid, because when they were sharing whatever they were, what if a student tells another student, well, that's not very magnificent or something like that? I did not hear that at all. They were so positive and so great with each other. And that is because exactly what you're saying, Jody. You're setting a culture of this positive attitude and this, that STEAM state of mind where it's okay to fail. It's okay to keep trying. It's okay if it's not the best, but we keep getting better, all of that stuff. And it comes together. So you're doing a great job in helping with all of that, developing it here. So,
well, and since I didn't have the advantage, and neither did our listeners, of actually watching this sort of blossom yesterday, can you guys walk us through one of these magnificent projects that they came up with and tell us kind of what you saw? What did these kids
I have a couple,
develop?
but you can.
Well, I can talk about yesterday's.
Yeah.
So the book, The Magnificent Thing, is a growth mindset, picture book, and it's about a little girl who. She wants to build this great thing, and she has her assistant, which is her adorable little dog, and she just comes up against challenges and setbacks, and she wants to give up. And so, we open the lesson. Really, I think you open the lesson by asking if describing what magnificent is. What do they think is magnificent? You shared an example of something. We shared our I can statements, and then I read the story, which kind of feeds my teacher soul because once a teacher, always a teacher, right? And we discussed that story as we read and, kind of gave them some thinking time and response time during the story. And it came down to the perseverance and like you said, the failures, right? Understanding that failure is not a negative. You learn and you work, and the progression of, growing through failures. And so after we read that story, and they were captive. I mean, they were engaged. It was really cool. Then, I kind of give it back to Bern to explain the project piece of it. So I'll let you explain the project piece.
So what we were doing is I wanted to, because that throughout that whole, throughout that story, we really didn't know what the girl was making until the very end. And really it wasn't for herself. It was for her dog, because she had a scooter. And on that scooter, the dog, when she would ride the scooter, the dog would have to run next to her and get tired. Okay, so basically, at the end, we realized that the magnificent thing that she was trying to do was to have a little attachment to her scooter where the dog could ride in and not get tired and be with them.
That's magnificent.
I know it's not magnificent, and it shows empathy, and it shows all these different things. And we were talking about story clues and all of this stuff with a good, the language arts aspect of things. But we talked about how, how she didn't even do it for herself. She did it for somebody else, okay? And so I think, that's pretty magnificent when we can do that too. Right. But anyway, so what we did is we had Lego sets, and we these are the Legos that in another podcast we talked about Lego, and we had we bought all these Lego from the Dayton Brick Shop.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, so so what we did is we just said, engineer something magnificent. And they dumped the Legos out on the floor. They looked at it, and they had no directions. They had no, follow this plan. That's what's going to be magnificent. And they came up with some pretty awesome things that some of the kids, when we said, okay, now you have to put them back in the box. And
Yeah, they didn't want to.
they didn't want to.
No,
They're
this
like,
is too magnificent to put back in the box.
Yeah, and one was like, well, can't I just take it home and show my family, and then I'll bring it back tomorrow, I promise. And it's like, no, But they did, and they were so proud of it. Some of them had no idea what they were doing. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I don't know what that is. But when they explained it to each other, because we had them talk to each other, explain it, it was like, that's where your mind was or whatever. And they had a problem solve. And in one of my groups, I had the student, we only had so many of, what are those, the tile.
Yes, same here.
The
base.
the
Base tiles.
Yes, the base. And So one of the students said, "Oh, well, I'll use this half and you can use that half."
And that was
they
2 different
shared-
groups?
And 2 different
very
kids.
cool.
doing it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Talk about SEL, right there. There was no arguing. There's no fighting over whatever. They were cooperated. They collaborated together. They helped each other out in showing different things. It was a great, perfect problem solving, engineering and trying. And one girl was trying to build the most magnificent house out of Lego, out of the Lego. And then after a little bit, she was like, and she took it all apart and started again. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And then what was also really awesome, and I know I'm talking too much, as Jody should be talking, but the other thing that was so cool is you run out of time. And most of the kids didn't have their most magnificent thing completed at 100%. But they were okay. Like they, a lot of times, especially first graders, will get upset.
Get
I
frustrated.
just need to finish and I need to blah, blah, blah. They understood and they were like, okay, share what you got, and they did. And then they said, well, I was going to do this and this and this, but I didn't ran out of time. And,
Well, and how
it was
cool that
great.
challenges them to use their words and explain what that was supposed to look like when it was finished. What I have in my brain,
What
I'm
they had there.
translating
Yep.
into words, and I'm explaining it to you and sharing with you. That is really neat.
Well, and that leads into their writing skills then, because that is probably one of the most, and Jody, one of the most difficult things that students say is like, well, I know what I want to say, but I can't write it. And this helps. It helps that development at a younger age when they can do things like that and explain what they had in their mind and what they visualized. And then later, when they really get into the writing, it helps them in their writing.
Well, I think one of the greatest things that kids, the most impactful things that they need for good writing is experience.
Yes.
I mean, so that would be a great lesson extension, which, that we didn't get there, but a great lesson extension would be for them to write about their magnificent thing that they wanted to create at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed something when you used the word engineering with these first graders. I was waiting for someone to say, "What do you mean?" And no one did.
Yeah, they
took off with
understood it.
They understood it. Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat.
I think they hear, words like that enough that because we use those now more,
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Instead of saying make something, you say engineer something, and even to the younger kids. And I think that they begin to hear those words and understand what they mean and use them, which is so cool.
It is cool. They rise to the expectation.
Absolutely.
So, Jody, here's the other thing that I've been noticing while I'm working with you and collaborating with you on these things is that, you pick out specific skills that the students, you feel are the need of the time. Okay, so I liked how we had a conversation about why did you choose perseverance as our focus that we collaborated these lessons on? Why is that your focus right now? How did you come up with that?
Well, and I think we were talking prior to recording today, but, as a counselor, I use data to drive what I do in my school counseling program. And, our data shows that our students really need to persevere when schoolwork is challenging, when life challenges, arise. And so we're coming up on this point in the year where we're getting to, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are going to be taking the Ohio State test. And, to get that test in front of you is very overwhelming if you really don't believe you can do it and you don't believe in yourself that you can persevere and break things down and make things, smaller tasks. And so that is why I really wanted to focus on perseverance at this point, moving into this spring, is because, we've been working to instill these skills into the kids all year, but I want to put it into action and allow them to, just really let that manifest in them that they can. It may be hard, but they can do it. They can learn. They can get those words, on paper or type them in the computer, even if it's challenging. And so that's why perseverance it's just so important to the students in our building.
It really helps you to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
When you can persevere.
They need They need to believe in themselves because we have a building full of very bright and creative and kind, like respectful students.
Yes.
And I'm not 100% sure that they really see themselves as we see them, and I hope they do. And I hope they're growing as learners in that way. But yeah, they need to really build that self-efficacy and believe in themselves that they can learn, they can do hard things.
Well, in the tie-in, Bern, you started this by saying you're probably wondering how in the world we're tying STEAM in with SEL, but you guys did it beautifully. And I think, most people out there, educators or not, understand why we need to teach, science and technology and engineering and math. But I know the last 2 years have certainly put the spotlight on social emotional learning. But why is that also such an important part? And we have made it such an important part here in Kettering of the overall educational experience. Why do we need to continue to be sure we're focusing on social emotional learning as much as we are learning math problems or science, experiments or reading a book? Why is it so important?
It's important because we have classrooms full of lifelong learners. We want to instill in these students the skills they need to succeed no matter what the subject is of what they're doing. I mean, if they're going to go into something that requires a lot of math, that skill is very important. But if they don't have the skills to collaborate and ask for help and to, calm themselves down when they are met with frustration in real life situations, that's going to really impede their success in whatever avenue they go that is, in the academic realm. Like, it is a lifelong skill.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying also, we have to have the teacher mindset with this too. So we're talking about the student having their believing in self-efficacy and, the teacher needs to be on board with this too, or the whole school. And so that's kind of really cool what we're doing here at Greenmount with this, because here's one thing that I have, that I've noticed in this position that I'm in is that my kids can't behave for that. And that's an excuse for not doing anything hands-on. They keep them isolated. They have them in rows. They can't do things like that. But then when I go, I was like, well, let's just try. Then some teachers will be like, okay, good luck. But but you know what? They're like, well, that's the best behaved they've been all year. And a lot of times, I find that when kids are bored, that's when you misbehave. When I'm bored, I start
You get in all
thinking,
kinds of trouble, don't you?
yes, I'm a little
Just
mischievous.
misbehave. Goodness.
Yes, and so so that's where STEAM education and I think where it's highly engaging things like what we were doing, those kids just loved playing, working with those, and it wasn't like they had to follow step-by-step directions and stuff like that. Tomorrow they're going to be digging up chocolate, digging through chocolate. So it's going to be really cool. But anyways, the thing that I'm trying to say, and what I'm trying to reinforce what you're saying, we have to give these kids opportunities where they can collaborate, cooperate, communicate with each other. We can't have them in, this is just my personal opinion, okay, but in rows where they're isolated and they have to be, sit there and be quiet and be still, all day long and expect them to behave. That's not our world today. That's not what they're used to. And so what we're doing and integrating the SEL and saying, okay, you know what? Today you're going to have an opportunity to be doing these things. And, we're going to have to see perseverance. We're going to have to see how you guys communicate with each other and cooperate and how you can, we talked about the balloon breathing again. We talked about all of these, we gave them strategies and showed them strategies of if you get frustrated, this is something you can do to help. And the kids
actually, I think they gave us the strategies, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Remember, we'd asked them, and they had some good
really
strategies
good ones,
down.
Yep.
Yes.
Well,
So,
and what's so impactful is when you said that, you had students say, oh, please let me take this home and show it to my mom or show it to my dad. That we've talked about that before, and you've said how neat that is when you hear either from parents who say, oh, well, my child told me they just loved the lesson today. And when you hear that it goes, from the student doing it in the classroom to maybe talking with their classroom teacher about it to wanting to go home and talk to their parents about it, that is success for sure.
Yeah. Well, I got an email a couple of weeks ago from a parent that told me that, the only time that she ever gets a conversation, and I shouldn't be saying this maybe, but the only time she has a conversation that her child tells about academics of what they're doing and different things is on when they have STEAM in their classroom. And, and it's so... So this is what I love about what we're doing here at Greenmount with the SEL and stuff like that, because, if you have a STEAM mindset, it should be every day in your classroom. It should be every day. So the kids would go home and have these experiences to share and talk to their families with and stuff like that. We're getting there. It's going to happen, hopefully. But, it's that process. It's that change that we are trying to work through, and I think Kettering is really doing a good job in supporting it and trying to get to that point where these kids are going to go home and they're going to be like nonstop saying how much they learned that day. So,
yeah.
So, anyways, the one more thing that I wanted to emphasize or talk about with the SEL is there's specific standards and there's specific things or whatever, and there's one counselor, and there's all of these things now. Like, in my position, I'm like, so busy. But, how do you recommend other counselors who might be listening, how can they approach using STEAM education to support SEL? Like, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think I look at a school counselor's role as a leadership by service role. And so this is a philosophy on my part, but I feel like it's my job to come into a school, and I am here to help teachers do their job to their, reach their potential, help students reach their potential. And I think if a counselor is listening and they're in a school, they're one counselor, maybe one of two counselors in their building, and they do not have the awesome resource that we do in you. I think that they could collaborate with their teachers and offer to come in and team teach, help plan, and just come alongside their teachers and say, I'm here to help. This is, I'm sure they're all seeing the same things, the same, pockets in the data where the need is. And it's just it's a collaboration that I think they can come and work with their teachers. And
it's that mindset
right.
It's
all
not
integrated.
Just the only time they're going to get any type of SEL is when you go into the classroom.
Correct.
It's that mindset, like this could be something that we integrate.
Well, and integrating SEL is just as important as integrating STEAM, and it all just becomes this great, big, magnificent way of teaching kids.
Yeah, it's
Amen.
all fluid. And it really does. It starts, but the STEAM education piece, with the collaboration of teachers and counselors or, other staff in the building who could come along and help with that too. But, SEL in general, it's a team effort. It's a building-wide effort. It's learning how to communicate. Like our principal, she'll give like little blurps on the announcements. And for a while she was speaking about, hey, when someone says hello to you, you look them in the eye and you say hello back. And, we don't call people by anything other than their names, so that there's a leadership piece in this too. And it starts from that top and moves throughout the culture of the building. So SEL is not really it's a way, it's not really
it's a culture.
It's not
it's
a thing. It's a culture.
It's a state of mind.
It is. It's just, a state of mind.
It's awesome.
That is. And thank you so much, Jody.
Yeah,
it's great
thank
talking
you,
to you.
Jody.
And
Well,
now
thanks.
I'm inspired to come see about the chocolate.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know about that tomorrow. I'm
I'm going to be
grade.
up late tonight melting
Yeah,
chocolate
melting
and doing
chocolate.
things, but yeah,
we'll
it'll be
have,
okay.
We'll have to talk about that. So, Coach S, we have a question. We actually got this just as we were sitting down from Ryan. And the question is, how do you provide STEAM extension opportunities for the general education teacher?
Okay, so Jody and I were, we just had a little bit of this discussion where, the writing aspect, what we just talked about, where the kids, and, an extension to that would be, a writing piece. And that is something that I've been working on. Now, it's going to be, like you said, a collaboration of people to be able to come up with this, but I've been really working on these PBLs, project-based learning, or if it's not just a project-based learning, if it's just a couple of experiences that they have in, with me in the classroom. Okay, well, how do you follow up with it? What is it that you're going to do next with it? So here's an example. I was working with third grade students, and these third grade students were gathering all this data about how much, the different light bulbs or whatever, how much energy, how much thermal energy were they giving off, and they're recording that data and other things. And, and so they have this challenge, their challenge was to conserve energy conservation and that type of thing. Well, anyway, so, what I add with the extension to that is, okay, we got to comprehend this data that they gathered. And so between when we did all of the background knowledge and the experiences and stuff like that, so they have a better understanding of what energy conservation is, and, why is it that we're conserving energy with a light bulb, but we're, the light's still giving off light. We didn't reduce the amount of light, maybe even increased it, but the energy is not being wasted through thermal energy. And that's the big thing with these newer light bulbs. Well, does the data prove that, and how? And so in the change over time, so they created these line graphs, and the kids saw, how the different light bulbs changed the thermal energy, the temperature over time. But then they had to write out, what does that mean? So what? Okay, let's comprehend it. And so, I do these things that some teachers are not like, oh my God, that's so many supplies and so many things. And I get a little nervous having light bulbs and hot ones on there and so like that, whatever. So I really am trying to come in and do kind of those things and train the teachers and coach them through that, and then give them the extensions after, like, okay, now do something with this. Don't let this just be, okay, this is STEAM time, like what we were talking about. It's part of that culture. And so I am giving them the tools and trying to help them do things prior to and after, each whatever, every time I'm there, so, but it's a process. It's going to happen, and it's happening more and more. And now I'm getting more questions about, okay, well, what do you want us to do before? Or what can we do before? Okay, give us some ideas. Let's collaborate on what we can do. What we can do after. Yeah, which now makes my work more. But but it's okay.
Job security.
Job security, yes. But, and the thing is that, we're building, all of these different lessons, these PBLs and these experiences for these kids that we're keeping good record of it. And we're going to be sharing. Hopefully this summer I'll be able to compose it all into these, anyways, this big one-shop place for all the teachers to be able to say, hey, I'm going to look at that lesson and what I have to do before and after and stuff like that, and ask questions about it, but we'll have it all there, what we've been working on the past couple of years. So that's kind of the goal. So I don't know if I really answered the question.
I think you did.
Okay.
And then some, maybe, which is okay.
Probably.
Which is okay.
I tend to talk too much.
Bottom line, it sounds, you're bringing more and more teachers on board, and the more you do that, the more STEAM will become a state of mind in our district, and that's how other districts can do the same thing.
Yeah, Kettering is starting to become the model of what to do, and that's really exciting. So,
which will just mean more work for you, Bern.
Yeah.
That's
when do I
okay.
retire?
Retirement? No.
I don't know. All right.
I'm too young, right? Hold on,
thanks,
you're all supposed to
Jody.
say right about
Yes,
that.
yes,
okay,
yes,
okay, there
yes,
you go.
yes.
All right.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't even think I needed to respond to that. That was so ridiculous.
Oh, God, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
All right, good. Thank you. And until next time.
Until next time.